Good morning, everybody. My name is Eleanor Terrett. I am a host of the Crypto in America podcast. And today we were talking about Bitcoin mining and does the concentration here in the US and the notion of America leading in the Bitcoin mining race, does that risk decentralization? And I have two amazing experts here with me to discuss today and to kind of get into the details. We only have 15 minutes, so I do want to get into it, but I obviously want to introduce you guys. Troy Cross, you're a senior fellow at the Bitcoin Policy Institute. And Jayson Browder, you are, and I know this, you're senior vice president of government affairs and social responsibility at Mara. I believe the social responsibility bit is new. I didn't know that. But so Troy and Jayson are joining me today. Give it up for them, please. So Jayson, I want to start with you. You've said that Bitcoin, that the U.S. should lead in Bitcoin, in several areas. Hash rate dominance, economic innovation, energy innovation. What do those look like in practice rather than principle?
I mean, it's a great question, and we're already seeing this play out, not just at the federal level with the executive orders on the SBR, but also at the state levels. Texas, most recently, passing SBR legislation with the first appropriations, $10 million to purchase Bitcoin. But also, you see this playing out, as my counterpart at CleanSpark mentioned, with revitalizing economies, rural communities throughout the U.S. And as we mentioned earlier, you can't have one without the other. I think Bitcoin mining and SBR, they work in tandem together. And that's why the U.S. should continue to lead on both of those fronts.
Troy, you said leadership isn't just about hash rate dominance, it's also about keeping the network decentralized. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Why is it so important to keep that sweet spot, I believe you called it, of a hash rate?
Yeah, well, Bitcoin's value, a lot of it comes from its neutrality. Bitcoin is a network that anyone can access in the world, anyone can store value on, and then they can access that value or send it to whoever they want. It's a core part of what makes Bitcoin special. If any one jurisdiction, legal jurisdiction, gains a majority of the hash rate, it threatens the neutrality of Bitcoin. And you already heard earlier today from Craig Warmke about exactly how that attack on Bitcoin would go. It would involve something like an order from the, say, Treasury to all Bitcoin miners in the US, if it was the US that had the majority of hash rate, not to include transactions from certain addresses or to certain addresses in a block, and also not to build a chain that already contains some of those forbidden blocks. So to orphan any transactions from any other miners that violate the rule. That would effectively censor Bitcoin. So there's always a risk at 51% that a jurisdiction could censor Bitcoin with that mechanism. Right now, the US doesn't have hash dominance. It's at something like 38%. It's hard to say actually where it is. It's hard to know where all the hash rate is. And this administration and Congress doesn't show any interest in doing this sort of thing, but Bitcoiners are paranoid. Bitcoin is built on paranoia, and this conference, unlike some Bitcoin conferences, isn't about pumping your bags or cheerleading an asset. It's about critical thinking through the benefits of Bitcoin, but also the challenges Bitcoin faces. So this is one of those challenges out there on the horizon. China used to have hash rate dominance before they made Bitcoin mining illegal. The US has it in its sights, although it's quite a ways off. Yeah, I'm raising the risk of it happening and raising awareness of that risk.
Jayson, how does Mara balance strategic hash rate with network neutrality?
Well, I mean, Mara's, I think, the only publicly traded Bitcoin miner that has its own pool. So that in itself, I think, is good for the decentralization of the hash rate. But also, I think, as we talked about earlier, I think competition is good. I think competition is good between miners. I think competition is good between different jurisdictions. We would say it's good for there to be mining in Europe. There's good for there to be mining in Africa. Our CEO it's mentioned that he thinks eventually, Bitcoin mining will be in everything. It'll be in your house, in boiler rooms. It'll be in small compliances everywhere. And so, we see a future where we actually think it's going to be more and more decentralized, but overall, competition, I think it's good for the network. And obviously, we support that.
Would you say policymakers, you do a lot of work on the Hill, Jayson, would you say policymakers are understanding the nuances of Bitcoin mining and sort of the risks of possible concentration here in the U.S.? What are your thoughts when you speak to lawmakers on the Hill? Is it positive? Is there more work to do? How are we doing there?
I think we're doing a great job. You can see how many public officials are educated on this issue. A lot has to do with the great folks like Troy Cross and BPI is doing every day. I do think that public officials are thinking about the geopolitical aspects of the SBR and having a significant amount of Bitcoin comparatively to competitors. I do think, and I know this for a fact because we have conversations with them about hash rate and about hash rate moving to, say, peer competitors or adversaries. It's a real issue, and it's something that people not only within the White House or the DoD, but also committees like the House Committee for the CCP are actively thinking about and engaging with think tanks at BPI or companies to better understand the strategic importance of not just having, as I mentioned, the Bitcoin, but having enough block space that they would be able to transact and not be blocked by competitors or adversaries.
Let's get a little technical, Troy, because I know you're good on this stuff. Policy changes, in your point of view, what would be the best, do you think, to help scale carbon negative Bitcoin mining without distorting the energy markets?
Oh, wow. I would say just accurate pricing of energy. There isn't any special legislation needed, except Bitcoin miners are just the most amazing user of energy. They are incredibly price sensitive and flexible and location agnostic and time agnostic. And this means that if you give them a price signal that energy is scarce, they will turn off their miners. And if you give them a price signal of energy is abundant, they will turn them on. And the only places where you don't see miners behaving that way is where you have markets that don't accurately price energy. Can I go back to something Jayson said?
Of course, please.
I think we need the ability to transact as Americans and not be censored by any other miners. And that's a national strategic priority. I think what's interesting about Bitcoin is that you don't need to dominate the hash rate in order to do that. You need to prevent anyone else from dominating it. And this is sort of different from, this is what I want to say to lawmakers and to regulators. It's different from other games we play as humans. We're locked on the idea of warfare, where winner takes all, and you want to be dominant. It goes back to the Thucydides trap outlined more than 2 millennia ago. It was Sparta as a rising power. Athens preemptively attacks because dominance is everything and you don't want to lose it. I think it's totally the wrong way to think about Bitcoin. In Bitcoin, if you get 51%, then your enemies no longer want to use the chain and the value of the asset drops. So to win is to lose. To dominate is to lose. But at the same time, you don't want to lose in the sense that have someone else dominate you. So it's a new game that doesn't fit into the model of warfare and technological, like AI. You want to race to be the first to AI because the winner to the AI race is going to dominate. And it's easy to fit Bitcoin in that slot. And I'm just kind of throwing up a flag saying, no, Bitcoin's different. You don't want to dominate. You want to win, and that's compatible with other people winning. You don't want to lose. That's what makes it special.
I'm going to follow on from that, Jayson.
No, I completely agree with that. And to like the earlier question about leading, there's other ways that, I think that the U.S. can lead on the Bitcoin mining front. In particular, we think the future is public-private partnerships. We were one of the first to do a public-private partnership in the UAE, the Sovereign Wealth Fund. Late last year, we signed an MOU with the Kenyan government. And we've been engaged in a lot of conversations with the U.S. government about ways that you can have public-private partnerships. One, to increase the Bitcoin in the SBR in a budget-neutral ways, but to the earlier points on environmental aspects. What if we're doing on-site power, so methane mitigation, right? What if you could do that on public lands? You could partner with the government on those types of projects across the U.S., and it's a way that the U.S. can lead, again, on sort of the technology front, and then has an economic development piece to this as well.
Let's talk about the local impact for these partnerships, for obviously the Bitcoin mining facilities in the U.S. What should the host communities, especially in like rural America, expect for job creation, tax revenue, energy investment, that kind of thing?
I think that's one for Jayson.
Yeah, it was.
I thought you were about to answer it with your big brain. Community investment, I think, is at the heart of, and it has to be, with Bitcoin mining, because there's a lot of, as we call it in the space, FUD, about what the machines do, or the noise, or the water usage and all this stuff. We're actively engaged in the communities that we operate in, whether that's sponsoring the 4th of July parade in Granbury, or delivering meals to the local food banks, but also everything from, sponsoring the robotics clubs at high schools and having interns come in and upscaling. And so you see the importance of that at the local level, but then when you see things like New Hampshire passing at SBR, Texas passing at SBR, Arizona, we call it an SBR light version that they passed. You can see that bubbling up. And we think that's through the community levels that state and local legislatures support these types of policies and initiatives, because they see the benefits that have been accumulating in these communities that in some aspects have been left behind.
How are you viewing the state SBR initiatives, Joy?
I mean, it's interesting as a Bitcoiner, a longtime Bitcoiner. The idea that the state would buy Bitcoin, it blows my mind, and it seems weirdly opposite how I originally envisioned Bitcoin. Same for Wall Street. I thought we would put all those guys out of business, and we were running something that's non-state money. But this is what adoption looks like, and there is no path to global Bitcoin adoption, and it's achieving its role as money, non-state money, that doesn't run through current power centers, whether that's finance or government, making the most of this tool that's for everyone, including enemies, as it always has been. And the number goes up, and states are smart to get a hold of it. And unlike mining, owning dominance is good. There's only 21 million, less than that. And you're better off having more of it than less of it, and it's just that simple. So, I mean, kudos to the states that are recognizing it's a strategic asset for them and for the U.S. as well.
I hope we have a few more seconds, actually, but I do want to just ask one last thing, and that is, going forward, what does responsible Bitcoin leadership U.S. leadership in Bitcoin mining look like to you? Jayson, you can start.
That's a great question. Again, I think it comes down to the people aspect of this, and bringing as many people into the fold as possible, whether that's through the traditional financial markets that a lot of boomers come into the space on, whether that's on the technical side, the mining or the environmental aspects to this, or the positive benefits of mining on the environment. I think we have, as Bitcoiners, we need to reach people where they are. A lot of people in the community that we do community stuff with have never seen a Bitcoin mine before, or don't know anything about Bitcoin. And having those engagements at the local food bank about what Bitcoin is, what self-sovereignty is, and meeting them where they are is super important for the future of not only our industry, but I think just the growth of the space.
I think it's a great question. I think that Bitcoin mining in America's openness to it, following the China ban, is why we have power available for AI right now, and why we're achieving AI leadership. It was a terrific move back then. I think it's an industry that needs to be embraced for what makes it unique and special. What it can do is turn down in moments. It is incredibly price sensitive and flexible, as I said earlier, and it's an incredible asset, people still don't realize this, to our electrical grid because of that flexibility. As we're moving to more and more intermittent renewables on the grid, we have a counter force that balances that intermittency and the intermittency of demand. And I think we need to lean into that. And it builds up our power infrastructure as a whole by monetizing otherwise wasted energy. And energy is key to our future overall because it underlies all economic activity. So I think Bitcoin mining needs to be fairly regulated, given honest price signals in an open market and allowed to do its thing. And we started in on that path and we're very successful because of it. We just need to lean in and do more of it. No special treatment for this industry. Just let us do what we do really well.
Great. Thank you so much, guys. Troy, Jayson, give it up for an awesome panelists.